Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. Mitch, I don't have a working title today.
I think it should be Attend the Tale of Sweeney Todd.
Mitch, I know we're looking for a working title, but we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater, Attend the Tale of Sweeney Todd.
Why not? I like it.
Because I feel like there are some hardcore, some diehard uh, theater fans, musical theater fans who will think otherwise.
Well,
Will think
I'm
other things.
I'm going to also say something very. Ah, I hope nobody gets upset by this. The theme to Sweeney Todd, Mr. Sondheim's phenomenal theme, is a takeoff, and I can't prove it's on purpose, although he hasn't denied it when he was alive, of the Alfred Hitchcock theme. Da 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 da. That's the Alfred Hitchcock theme.
Hmm.
So just putting that out there right at the beginning.
I'm sure there is someone out there who is.
Gonna argue with me, and
Wait a minute.
it's a
Wait a
good thing we're
minute.
not on Twitter. They'd
Yes.
just be ripping us to
But
shreds.
we love the fans. Like where would any of us be without them? You
More of
know.
you, please bring us more fans.
Wow. Moa. Okay, so speaking of fans,
First of all, hi, Darnell Radford.
yes. This is the business of theater, a working title. I am Darnell Radford,
I'm Mitch Weiss.
and let's get down to business.
Yeah.
Speaking of fans,
Mm-hmm.
um, when the front row is not close enough, is the tagline for the new, fairly new Museum of Broadway, which I did visit over the weekend.
Interesting.
Yes,
I too have been there. And
yes,
I certainly, if you're a fan, there's a lot there to see.
yeah. It's at 145 West 45th Street. Um, it's it's an
Between 6th and
interesting.
7th Avenue, so
Yes,
that they know it's the east side of Times Square.
I don't know. You can go to show notes, to figure out how to get there and get tickets and all that. This isn't a promotion for it. However, I will tell you about my experience there, um, because it is advertised as a home for fans. You know, um, so it is set up as so for those diehard fans. And there are some things about it that my experience that I really enjoyed. And then I walked out and had a lot of comments.
Yeah.
you know,
I'm trying to be nice and very positive, and I don't want to say I'm not positive. I mean, they
yeah.
did an amazing amount of work,
Mhm.
and there are a lot of things. There are a number of omissions. There are,
Well, before we
yeah.
get
I'm not going there. I'm
before we get
staying
deep
general.
into it, I'm gonna say there's been a lot of experiential uh, offerings, such as like the Museum of Broadway. For example, there are traveling exhibits that may be in your towns for Van Gogh, for Banksy, and the like, and they are these kind of experience. Oh, for instance, here in our mall downtown, the Fashion District, there's a space called Wonder Spaces where it's sort of it's designed to be kind of Instagrammable.
Mm,
Where it's a space where you can actually say, "Look, this is me here," and then snapshot, and that's and there you are. And so there's a lot of things like that. So I felt like that may be some of the concept of the Museum of Broadway. Like this is not a stuffy institution, that's been around for years. This is like a it's designed to be kind of fun and vibrant
You
and
can shadow dance to America from West Side Story right in front of the screen where they're doing it.
yes.
There is some interactive. On the other hand, and without mentioning names, I had a discussion today with a photographer, a Broadway photographer, who is represented all over this museum. Her work, um, and as she said, look, you get to a certain point of working in our industry, and who cares about Instagram? I went there to see things that brought up memories, that educated me, that got me excited. And there was so much Instagrammable moments that it almost drove her crazy.
I can
And so,
I can
again, it
understand that.
depends on your age,
Mhm.
and so good for them. They're after a younger audience, perhaps.
And honestly, I only took one selfie in the space.
Me too. Only one.
Um, but so uh, you know, I kind of set the scene, if you will.
go go for it, Darnell.
You have to walk through the gift shop. You will also exit through the gift shop because that is the way museums work. Um,
Hold on for 1 second, and I apologize, but I have to do business, right? We
uh-huh.
are the business of theater.
Yes.
This museum is not a nonprofit operation.
Mm.
They have investors. They are run, I'm told, on purpose, like an investment to a Broadway show. That's how it was set up,
Hmm.
which is an interesting business plan.
Well,
But just so you understand, their pricing, their concept is to make money for investors,
mhm.
as opposed to we're a museum of art and we're here and we have donors and the whole bit. They don't do that. Okay, now you can continue with your
And
setup.
that is kind of why I reference the Banksy exhibit, the Van Gogh exhibit, because they are kind of in that vein too. It's like it's art on display, but it is a for profit, endeavor.
Mm,
So you kind of have to know that before you walk in, because some of the thoughts that you and I have about the Museum of Broadway um, are very justified if we're trying to if we thought a facility with this name was going to be a capsule of
mm,
the community. And so it's not a museum of theater, it is a museum of Broadway, and Broadway is commercial, most of it.
right, right.
So, uh, upon entering the building, you can either take once you scan your tickets, you can take the elevator to the third floor, I believe, or the stairs. You can walk up the stairs. And there's something about that aesthetic that is kind of, yeah, kitschy. Yeah, it does feel like you are behind the scenes, just because of the state of these areas, these behind the scenes areas, like the staircase. Um, but when
Again,
you
just to set the tone, this museum is a lot of small rooms with different themes in it. It's not like you're
Mhm.
walking into an art museum and there's this expansiveness
Yeah.
which you get to feel. So, New York is a tight, you know, every room is tight, every office, every apartment is relatively small. So you're going to feel the same thing in this museum. You go from room to room with people live people actually explaining some of this stuff to you
Hmm.
along the way.
Yeah.
Back
Uh,
to you,
s-
Dono.
so the first room has these tiles on the wall, and the tiles feature they're from Playbill. The tiles feature every show that is currently on Broadway. And there's a QR code you can scan to get more information about those shows. It probably just leads right to the website. And so I could tell right away that it was kind of set up for what's currently going on.
Hmm.
Not a
Hmm.
problem. But you walk into the next room, and there's a little video that explains the journey to Broadway. Well, how Broadway moved to Times Square. Talks about that originally started in the uh, lower Manhattan, and then worked its way up to Times Square because of, you know, essentially being priced out, which is kind of laughable considering what Times
Well,
Square
and
really
also
is
as the
now.
city built up,
Yeah.
it started in the downtown area and it started moving up. And just as a reference, Madison Square Garden, which is on West 33rd Street and 8th Avenue, or between 7th and 8th Avenue, is not at Madison Square. Madison Square is down at 23rd Street, not 33rd Street. Uh, and the reason it's called Madison Square Garden because it used to be down at Madison Square. Everything that is currently in the Midtown area was once in Lower Manhattan.
Yeah.
The Broadway theaters, Showboat Opera, the Metropolitan Opera was downtown. It wasn't at Lincoln Center, right? Everything has moved. So again, just a historical reference.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so after this video, then you walk through this space that breaks down. It's kind of like a snapshot of all the theaters. There's 41 theaters,
Mm-hmm.
and there are these huge tiles on the walls that break down, the time frame for everything. So they go, what's it start? Starts in the early 1900s, or the late 1900s. I don't know, the 19th century.
19th century, late
Starts in the
1800s, late
Yes,
1800s.
late 1800s. Yes. Uh, you know, talking about, like, follies. This is so funny. Yes. And you're immediately hit with an Instagrammable moment. It's like this very frilly kind of uh like a dressing room kind of setting. And so when you see that, you're just like, okay, this is going to be a lot of dressing rooms for photos in spaces. Like, here's a there was a whole segment for Ziegfeld Follies, and
Right.
that's like the it all began here in the late 1900s. Then you go through pictures, pictures, pictures. And then they have some really fun uh like Instagrammable spaces. Like, there was this room that was like, it looked like it was completely covered in uh programs. Well, not programs, but like sheet music. Sheet
Oh, you're
music.
talking about yeah, I'm
Yeah, because
forgetting
there's
which show.
I was tripped up at first because there's like two of these rooms. The first one is dedicated to Showboat, I think. At least everything on the wall was like Showboat. Um, but these are definitely artistic, kind of in their layout. It's just, we're gonna wallpaper the walls with the score of Showboat. And
Which I didn't quite understand. I don't know why we need to have the
I
entire wall.
Yeah, and
with a
I
bunch of
think
lyrics that you can't read because they're in all sorts of weird order.
yeah, and I think
Um,
that's so that you can just take pictures in there.
okay.
Um, but then there's these palettes on the wall that break down a range of what we're going to talk about. So like, you know, 1907 to 1920s. Here are the musicals and the plays that were most notable there. Um, and then it continues to go through the World War, 1927 and 1943. What theater was like then, what Broadway was like at the time, and then there's this room dedicated to Oklahoma.
Hmm.
There's just corn stalks everywhere, and you're just like, again, with the Instagrammable. Here's everything, all those features.
And quite honestly, as influential as Oklahoma was, and how many aspects, especially choreographically, how it changed the Broadway musical historically. You don't need a room, in my opinion, filled with corn stalks. We have a lot of stuff that could excite us that is part of the experience of Broadway. And if I could jump in, that one of the things that I wanted, it doesn't mean it's wrong that they didn't have it.
Hmm.
I wanted my family, friends who aren't part of the Broadway community, to get excited about the process we go through.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's just seeing a photo taken of the original show by some photographer with the cast that shows how different a show looks now from what it looked like then. And these are the things that they often did not have. And
Yeah.
I'm sure they have them somewhere. It's not that they're not in existence, they just didn't make a point of them.
Yeah.
Instead, they put us in the middle of an Instagrammable
Hmm.
photo. We can be in the cornfields. I
Yeah.
personally don't care. First of all, there weren't cornfields on the stage of Oklahoma anyway. It,
there were a lot
no,
of
they weren't.
no, no,
There were a
no.
couple of stalks,
I'm
and
not
that was it.
disagreeing.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing.
I mean,
There were a lot of cases of Tony Awards.
yes.
It's like, you have enough Tony Awards. Can we borrow one
Hmm.
for our museum? Um,
Yeah.
they
They
did
say you've
have.
seen one Tony Award, you've seen them
You've
all.
seen them all. I did. I did think a lot of the spaces were really nice, like the shop from West Side Story
I agree.
was
I
there.
agree.
That was so elaborate and
The
well
coffee
thought out.
shop, they gave you, you could be on stage with
Yeah,
it.
everything. And you
That
could
was
walk behind
nice.
the counter, which was really
Right.
cool. There's like keys on the wall, there's a jukebox, and on the jukebox was interesting. It's the score.
Mm.
So I don't know if it was playable. I don't think it was playable, but when you look at it, it's like, okay, what song do I want to play? The Jet song, or Tonight, or Cool, or I Feel Pretty. It's all broken down. That's how the jukebox was set up. It was cute. And then there's like, here's a costume that's pretty notable. Here's the bomber jacket. Uh, you know, it's
Yeah,
so
like,
iconic.
and all of these things have value, but the thing, like I said, that was missing, I would, I know the most exciting tour I give people if I am working on a show is you walk them on stage and they
Hmm.
look out at that audience and they're on the set of a show and it just fills you with wonder. And that wasn't there.
Yeah.
It wasn't there. I wanted to give me, I mean, they had a great model of a theater, a 3D model that you could walk around the entire building. It was, it's literally a model, but you could see where the offices were. You could see where the wardrobe rooms were. You could see where the stage was. That was pretty cool.
Oh, the
It,
Gershwin.
of the
Yeah.
Gershwin. Yeah,
Yes.
it was pretty cool.
That was very
Um,
nice.
yeah. So I mean, again, we're giving you
Actually,
pros and
I
cons.
would have been satisfied had they just went to every theater
Mm,
and did a scale model and then talked about some notable shows that were
that
in
were
those
there.
theaters.
Yeah.
That would have been really great. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you see stuff and there's iconic costume design like you know the red dress from Hello Dolly uh you know was on display and you can
Right.
take your photo there. There was this whole set for Cabaret uh
Mm-hmm.
that was there and I thought that was like the most it was fun and you know it looks like you're on the stage. Like it had the chairs and you could sit in the chair and take a picture there for Cabaret. It was fun and then you know it's just more costumes costumes costumes. Oh, I think I actually did two selfies. And
The
then
only selfie I took was in the hair exhibit.
I was just about to say that was the next
Yeah.
exhibit.
Yeah.
The you know, it's all sunshine and rainbows in there
Yeah.
and like swirly colors and the costumes and for hair. And that was fun. But when you actually when you're that close to the costumes, they don't look as magical
They don't. That's the point.
because they look great under light, you
Yeah.
know, under stage lighting.
That's
So
one of the, and again, that's one of the things there. I understand it's a museum, but I want, there's some of the magic that the education of knowing that a set designer, a costume designer, and a lighting designer talk to each other,
mhm,
that the finale costumes on a chorus line are somewhat pink, but on stage they glow in the lights. That was on purpose.
yeah.
The colors in the lights work on the costumes a certain way, and there's nothing telling you as someone walking through the exhibit that this is what happened. And I
Mm.
think that excites people to learn the inside stories. There were no inside stories during the museum visit.
I will say that the staff that was strategically placed throughout the exhibit, um, they had basically like these one-liners.
Mm-hmm.
Like they could tell you, w- "You're en- you're entering this space. This space was notable for blah 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 blah," you know. But it was like okay, and you could tell that well, it felt like they didn't have much beyond that
Mm-hmm.
to say. And so those were sort of awkward. And I would wonder what it would be like if it was crowded. Like what would a group how would a group
Well, they restrict how many people can go in there at a time. You're timed.
yes,
That everyone
very
has a
true.
timed admission,
Yeah, I
so
know.
they're
Thank
very
you,
aware of that.
Amtrak, for being on your BS. We had the haul ass there because I remember seeing that saying like you only have like a 15-minute window and I got there and I'm like, I don't think we had a rush today.
No, no.
So you know, my partner and I, we were kind of disappointed at their Sondheim um, piece.
Yeah, you
I
can't
just
do
didn't
any
think it
justice to
just
that.
wasn't enough. Like I felt like the
And
same.
they had too much on the new company. I mean, it's not that
Yes,
it the show lasted less than a year.
because
It
that
doesn't
was the
mean it
most.
shouldn't be there, but it's not. The iconic version was 1970.
Yes, and they didn't have. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like you know the documentary for Company where uh
Yes, the recording session.
yes the recording session with Elaine
Hmm. Stritch.
Stritch, and how she's struggling through this,
Hmm.
and like because it's been a long day, and really just trying to get it, and she's disappointed in herself, and you know, it's just you know we're gonna get through it, and like that video or a clip there to just show you like how passionate the artists are involved in this work.
Hmm.
That would have been a great thing to kind of see
And
there.
their monitors were like small television size, and I didn't appreciate that. I want to be absorbed, if that's
Yeah.
the right word. But again, a story, and I'm not old enough. I did not work on the original company, but one of the great things to know about it, Boris Aronson, who did the sets, who they did not make a big deal over, and this man won Tony after Tony after Tony after Tony on his shows. They were brilliant sets. In company, in those days, we were first learning how to use microphones on stage.
Mm,
The microphones in company, which is a two-story condo with a working elevator and steps up to the second level that had all these semi apartments on them. The microphones were in portions of the set.
mm.
So if you sang in the wrong direction on the set, you would go from on Broadway. These are stories I really wanted someone to tell me stories I didn't already know or something. They did not have any of these kind of stories. If you read some of the stuff on the walls, there were some interesting tidbits. I
I
mean, I don't
think
want to say there's nothing
I
there,
think
of
they should
course.
have had that collection of ushers who are at every Broadway show, and they could
Hmm.
say, "I've been ushering on Broadway for 40 years."
They could have. Well, that's the
Bob
other thing.
Fosse once said.
It would have been great. I would have just sat down and listened to that
Yes.
over and over. And we're not trying to rip this to shreds.
No, no.
The two women who put this together worked hard. You can see it, and
Oh
I
no, I'm
congratulate
just
them.
this
But
just makes I think visiting this museum just made I could say made us both hungry for more,
yes,
you know?
nicely
And
put.
so and that's what we're saying. Like this is about here's the most pressing, the most urgent kind of things that are going to pull in today's fan, but
Hmm.
with a little bit of history peppered in. But you know, we need a I I don't know. It's like knowing that they are for profit. It's like I walked out saying, I really hope they grow out of this space.
Yes, they
You
need
know,
to,
I
and
hope.
they need a special exhibit every month because
Yeah,
they can't do everything. We
yeah,
recognize that.
yeah.
But the other part of what you just said, my I'd like to say this is my only complaint, but it's my major complaint.
Mm,
On the way out, the last big room is dedicated to backstage. It's stage managers, stage hands, musicians, wardrobe people. They take all of these essential jobs and they stuff them into one room where you cannot follow them all. And they ignore, and let me get angry, they ignore company managers who run the whole damn show because they are not uh, glamorous. They are often just doing the work quietly, but
yeah.
everybody else has a moment in that room. Company managers, I walked out and I went right to the front desk and I said, where are the company managers? And the girl there, and this, I'm not going to say everyone in this museum, the girl there said, who? And that was the answer to me. There's a union of managers who pay every bill, cover the budget, hire everyone, fire people, do all the marketing. Every single, they check the box office, they bring in the money. None of these people had a moment in that museum. It is an important job, and I got ticked at the end because I kept waiting for even just a portion of a wall saying, and then there are company managers,
Hmm.
right? And this is what they do. And there wasn't.
Yeah,
So I now
I
put in my complaint.
I agree.
You better.
Com- com-
You want
complaint
to stay my friend? You're going to agree.
complaint processed and submitted. Uh, form thank you email has been sent to spam. um, so yeah, and it seems like it seemed like uneven in spaces. Like there was a segment dedicated to the Wiz,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically this vibrant kind of this whimsical 60s ish wall, and there's one costume piece, from the Wiz, and then you go down the stair. Well, there's pictures on the wall with the playbill, and then you go down the stairs, and the stairs are like the yellow brick road.
Mm-hmm.
So you take the stairs down, and it's all ornate, and it's emerald green on the way down, and there's a big sign there. I won't give it all away. You should go and form your own opinion. But it was just like, if you're gonna commit, like, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like they because I recently saw the Disney 100 exhibit, which is
Mm-hmm.
which is currently here in Philadelphia at the Franklin Institute, and I felt like they were trying to rush through 100 years of Disney.
Right.
And my partner, who loves the Hunchback of Notre Dame, there was only one piece in the whole exhibit dedicated to the Hunchback, and it was a gargoyle.
Hmm.
And it was just in a room. It was like, here's some mock-ups that we found.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
the truth is, look, we know you can't do everything. However,
Yeah.
uh, there are consultants, there are people to talk to, and you're talking about the staircase going down yellow bricks.
Mhm.
Well, the yellow brick road could also be advertising the movie. What makes that staircase
Mhm.
theatrical?
Yeah.
What makes it Broadway? There were no staircase with yellow bricks at the Broadway show. So while it's thematically appropriate, it's not Broadway theater.
Mhm.
And that is thematically why I had trouble with the museum.
Yeah.
There, you needed theater folk in there saying, "Well, this is a waste. Do something else with this." Or better yet, turn it into a fun house. You stand on the steps and they collapse and you go sliding down. That would be more fun.
Oh, wow. That would have also been dangerous, a little bit of a hazard.
I know liability insurance. We all company managers have to worry about that.
Yes.
Um,
Then we move
anyway.
in. Then we move into a chorus line, and it's just costumes, costumes, costumes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, and then it's just more Instagrammable. It's like it becomes a fun house. There's a lot of mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of mirrors in there. If you stand here in these strategic places, you'll get a really fun shot. Um, However, uh, I thought it was interesting until I saw, quite a few examples of this. There are these moments that sort of lead the staff off the main floors, and those are just these little hallways that either take you to a staircase or take you to, behind the scenes of the museum.
Mm-hmm.
And those were like they've done their best to sort of fill that space with just a little something something. Like there was one that was like, you know, if you do end up in this corner, you'll see Annie's dress. You
Right.
know, uh, you know, you'll see Annie's dress with with a sign. The sun will come out tomorrow. But it's right next to a fire alarm. So, it was just, you know, I don't want to sound so critical. It's just,
That's all right. That's our job.
there was
Uh, you,
a, yeah, there were a lot of beautiful things, but then it like, there was this wall that was like the type of jukebox musicals,
mm-hmm.
you know, and those are the kind of things that, like, okay, because everybody
It's
may not
thematic. We get to.
fully understand that, and so, breaking that down, so that was kind of cool to see. And then we get into like the 70s, where like A Misbehavin', Annie.
but difficult to know other than seeing their names what impact or not any of these had. Some had more impact than others. There are stories with each of these. And as with any museum, you don't have to read every story. People
Hmm.
will leave them, but they didn't have them there for me to read.
Yeah.
That is my complaint. I want stories because having worked there, it's exciting. And I want people to get excited. I thought this, a lot of nice things there, a lot of good memories, but there's nothing like standing on a Broadway stage or something that feels like it and feeling that power and that special connection that you get with an audience. That can be done even in a little room.
Correct me if I'm wrong. There wasn't one ghost light.
Correct. I looked for it.
Yeah. Not
There may have
one
been,
ghost light.
there may have been, there was such a mishmash in the last room backstage, which I think was thematically perhaps appropriate because it is somewhat chaotic backstage.
Technically, that is not the last room, but I know
Oh,
what
I'm
you're talking
sorry.
about. Yeah.
Near the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you get into the 70s. It's like late 70s and 80s. It's like black theater. It's like there's a lot of queer theater, Torch Song Trilogy, Cats, and then more costumes, La Caja Falls. And then there was a whole section that seemed to be dedicated to the public, or at least donated by the public.
hmm.
Because it was like here's all these costumes and shows that were at the public. Um, there was I guess, an AIDS shrine mural.
Yes, there was. That was an important period of time. It was
Yeah,
an entire decade
yeah,
of theater.
that was a beautiful space. Um, there,
Again, one of the interesting parts about that, and again, just talking about the impact, and I understand the limitation of space and bless them for even trying this. But that quilt, the AIDS quilt,
hmm,
went on for miles.
yeah,
And you're seeing a snippet of it, which is great. It's a great memory of a time period. I don't perhaps the right word isn't great, but it's an impactful memory. But you don't get that feeling of when the Broadway community gets together and how important this was that you would go to the theater one day working with a group of 80 people, and the next day, three of them were dead. They were dead, and then someone made a quilt patch that added on to the rest of the quilt that was then laid out in Central Park or some other. I mean, there's a history thing here. The young people who put this together can't feel this. And I wanted somebody there who was saying, start to feel what this is like.
hmm,
And as you said, it makes you want more.
yeah,
But this is what I went hoping for. And unfortunately, looking at window cards and a couple of costumes um, doesn't move me. It
yeah.
just reminds me of things.
Well, I wonder if I guess, is there a mission statement?
Well,
you know,
they look. They're very, and again, I'm not sure if this is the last room. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, but they left a couple of columns of window cards and photos open for the next few years to come up that they will
yes.
fill in. Of course, I don't know what happens after that, how much further they can go, but you get the sense it's an ongoing thing
Hmm.
that Broadway is still alive, and that they can only represent, even in recent years, a half dozen shows, and we have dozens of shows on Broadway every year.
Yeah. And
So,
that's why at the beginning I said, it would be interesting if this was kind of like a shrine to what's currently on Broadway. Like
mm,
it is the current season. And maybe it's sort of a deeper dive into everything that goes on, complemented by the making of a Broadway show. What it takes to create a musical from scratch and things like that. And but again, it's just because we're in it, and so I don't know. It's like there is something about a fan that is different than
well, this made me want to go back to the Broadway flea market, which this year will be on October 1st
mm,
on West 44th and West 45th Street in Manhattan. They'll shut down the streets. They do it usually the last weekend in September, just so everyone has that. The fans that come out there, they go through boxes and boxes of programs and photos and tchotchkes and souvenirs looking for that moment that they can connect with the actual original show.
mhm.
If nothing else, it should have been in their merchandise room as you walk out. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going, how could I not want to buy something?
Oh yes. I mean,
I there was nothing there I needed or
and
wanted to
while I
buy.
and while I get that the gift shop is more about what's currently available,
Hmm.
that stuff is available. That
All over
stuff
the
is
place.
available.
That's right.
I would have
That's right.
loved to. There was a whole room. It felt like they had dedicated a huge amount of space to rent.
Hmm.
And then there was no memorabilia from Rent that you could take home.
And by the way, an interesting tidbit in a conversation I had just yesterday with someone middle age, and they said that they had helped some youngsters with a school production of Rent, which is tricky in some places. But there's a line in it talking about whoop AZT break,
Mhm.
and in the original production, that always got a laugh from the audience.
Mhm.
But in the school, this is a college, no one laughed.
Yeah,
And
because
the
they don't know it.
persons asked them, "Do you know what AZT is?" And they did not. One person working on the show had actually Googled it. Good for them. But there is so much history connected to these shows. I come back to it again. This is the interesting part. If you have the quilt, the AIDS quilt up, and you have Rent, they're connected.
Mhm.
We need to. It's not pure textbook reading. This is living life. This is creative people putting the history of America on a stage. I hate to sound like I'm just constantly repeating myself. It's the reason we get excited by theater. And
Yeah.
I want to be excited. And hopefully, the museum will take, there are exciting moments,
Mhm.
and hopefully they will take them and learn to expand them and adapt and move forward. I'm sorry, I need to let you finish up your tour.
Oh
Go
no,
ahead,
no.
Darnell.
Well, I'm trying to like jump around because I do want people to go experience it for themselves.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
Um,
I mean,
I mean, we're being critical because that's what you do when you're inside of an entity. You just criticize it because you're so passionate about it that you just want it to be the best it could be. And
you
like
go to an art museum, and if it's about Picasso and they have one print of Picasso, you get angry, right?
yes.
It's about art. Well, I think the yellow brick road going downstairs gets me angry. It has nothing to do with theater.
Yeah.
It has to do certainly with the whiz
Mhm.
thematically, but this is the kind of stuff I went, where were the consultants? Where were the people there's no one that I know who would have turned down the chance to discuss any of these shows with these people who put the museum together.
Yeah.
Nobody would have said, "Oh, you got to pay me."
There was a corner for the Lion King, uh, which I thought, the Lion King, really? Could you? Disney came in with its 49 lawyers and said, "Here's three masks and two.
Yeah, really.
If these come out of their case, God help you. I swear to
And
God."
also, you know what? We have video. If you can't fit it in there, give me a giant screen like they did for West Side Story at the museum, right?
Yeah.
Where they have the dancing there, where you can dance in
Hmm.
front of it. That size screen should be in every room so that there's something. Walk us backstage.
Yeah.
Backstage at Lion King is the most amazing, and also Wicked, the
Hmm.
most amazing experience anyone can have, and yet it's not available to the public.
Yeah.
So put it on screen.
I
Let's
did.
see. Oh,
I was actually glad, even though it's just an office, but I was happy when I saw the producer's door,
yeah,
that
yeah,
that
I
you
got
could
it.
actually go
Mhm.
into the office.
Yeah,
That was
there
cool.
are some nice moments. I don't want to think anyone to think that
Oh no, there are a lot
there's
of
no
nice moments.
value here.
It
It's
just
just
says, like, we need like a we need a building the size of the Met.
we need a theater.
Yeah, we do.
Put the thing in a theater.
Well, theaters don't have a whole lot of space outside of the
Well,
stage and the house
I don't
itself.
mean a real theater. I mean,
There's only 3 dressing rooms in here? What? We're
but
paying how much?
wouldn't that be great to actually
4
walk into?
walls does not include
Wouldn't
dressing
it
rooms.
be great to go into it, see what the size of a dressing room at Chicago is? It's
Yeah.
a hole.
Yeah.
Someone should see that versus what the dressing room may be like at the Gershwin, right?
Yes.
These things are good.
I
People want to
did
see it.
I did like seeing the scale models, of
Yeah, I
sets,
did too. I
um,
did too.
of the producers, of In the Heights, and then, the most, the most elaborate was, there was also one for Moulin Rouge. Moulin Rouge.
And what about lights? We have computerized lights. Where's the excitement of that? It wasn't
Yeah,
there. It
well,
wasn't there.
in the backs well, I haven't gotten to backstage yet. I'm getting there.
I'm jumping way ahead of you.
No, I know we have a lot of, yeah, there's a lot in here. I didn't realize how many photos I took. I'm, like, swiping through photos,
Oh, is
like,
that
trying to
what
figure
that
out,
is?
like, "Oh,
Okay.
that's what I'm doing."
I took a
Um,
whopping two photos,
I
one
took a
selfie and one of somebody else in the swing at hair.
I
And
took
that
a
was it.
whopping 600 photos. I have no idea. I was just a shutterbug, like, click, click, click. Well, this is partially because I was
Generational differences, Darnell.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the scale model of, Wicked and the Gershwin, like, that was just amazing.
Yeah,
Like, to
that was
see
stunning.
all
That
the
was stunning.
offices and the backstage and everything, like, even down to the street level, with concessions and merchandise. That was just such an elaborate space, and I thought that was well done. Good kind of showing for that. And then just past that is the complete sort of, breakdown of everything that was showing up in this, I guess, in this, century,
Mm,
because it did start, that wall started 2001, 2000. Yeah,
right.
2001.
Somewhere around there, right.
Yeah, so then you go through, here's some notable shows, of the season, I mean, of those years. There was a whole segment for Hamilton, costumes, and, just a facade in general. And then that goes all the way to 2025, which is left blank for future
Hmm.
shows. There was also a little segment for, Spring Awakening there,
Hmm.
which took me a second. I was like, huh? Oh, okay. Like, who's gonna look at that? Like, I'm gonna spin you around, close your eyes, open up. Okay, what is this? Chairs on microphones. Microphones on chairs.
Hmm.
Mm, 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 mm. I don't know. Anyway, um, yeah. So once you get past that timeline, there's a ton of costumes there, and it was kind of cool to look at those costumes, and you can say, "Up, that was six. Up, that's Beetlejuice. Up, that's Sunset Boulevard. Okay, okay. That is how to succeed in business without really trying. Okay, great, great, cool. This is yeah, it was kind of cool to be able to look at those and kind of I mean, they had a little plate, but as you walk up on them, you're sort of like guessing. And you're like, "Wow, I do know a little bit about Broadway." Okay. As you could tell from costumes. But even though we have, you know, there's a whole lot more that we wanted, what was really cool about this space is that you turn the corner and it looks like you're about to go to an exit and you are at a stage door, an actual stage door. and and there's somebody standing there that lets you know you can walk through that because at first it just looked like, oh, this is an iconic stage door. Okay, cool. But then you open the stage door and it takes you downstairs, and this is like this is the part that's like it is kind of authentic. Like if you're a fan, you may not know this. Like as soon as you walk through that door, there's that little cork board with all the equity information on it. Like, it's like that's the kind of stuff where you're just okay, this is what happens when you walk through a stage door. You have to check in. Here's all your information. Everything you need to know is there. um, and then it's just a wall of shows, show posters, and then you lead down the stairs um, to
Which is not backstage at a theater.
no, you lead down the
So
stairs to the
experience has
making.
now been altered and isn't authentic. I don't know why they couldn't just let us feel like we're walking backstage
But this area is called the making of a Broadway show,
without
and
company managers
yeah, they show
or
you this.
general managers,
They
by
show
the way.
you what a typical stage manager's station looks like, with complete with a god mic, and there was some video from stage managers talking about what it's like to be in this space in that moment.
On a
Um,
very tiny screen.
However, even though you said that where are the company managers, there was there was some there were some items on the wall about company management.
Okay, where? I did not see it. I looked.
There's a wall near the stage manager's kind of station that has a bunch of clipboards on it,
Hmm.
and then there is a section for production manager. It's like two slides that explains what production management is, and then there's one for company management. Let me see what was in there. Like, what makes a company manager, contributing company managers, who is a company manager, what do company managers do? But it was like it's not. I mean, you had to really commit to wanting to know what a company
Obviously, I
manager
went
does.
looking and I couldn't find that.
Yeah, it was on. It was just on. It was on the wall. It was on the wall next to all the cables,
Hmm.
where
And
all the
that's
cables are.
inappropriate since we're not technically involved. Production managers are, stage managers are, but not company managers.
In
That's the
that
wrong
space,
place.
they talk about dramatists and stagehands, and then there's another Instagrammable moment, which is like a piano room, and
Hmm.
everything is completely draped in like sheet music again. It's yeah, it's just an Instagrammable space.
And that relates to stage managers, production managers,
I don't know.
designers. How does it
That was
relate?
that was like a departure because then you
Oh, but
turn the
it's in the
corner and you
same
kind of get.
room.
I know, but you turn the corner and you get. There was this interesting hallway that had sort of arches that were all the like patterns from various shows, and you had to really focus to see that. But I thought that was a cool. It was a cool path to kind of walk through and say,
How long did
"This
it
is
take
from
you to walk
this."
through?
I thought it was going to take about 2 hours, but I think it was about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
did. There are things I didn't need to do more than glance at.
Hmm.
So about an hour 15 is what I did.
Yeah, but they had a full light board, projection, and sound. They had a station set up there so that you could kind of see what it's like to be there. They had they so they kind of did have stages. There were projections of the various theaters, and so if you stand on this X, you're technically on the stage, and the image is the house of that theater.
Hmm.
And so you could take a photo and say that you're on the stage at the Walter Kerr, or or any other theater that you might want to wait to shovel through. So yeah, that was there. There was a huge I think it was a baby grand. Was it a baby grand or a grand
I
piano?
don't remember.
There was a piano. You can't play it though, because that would have been fun.
I think at that point I was tired.
Yeah. Um, and there was like a whole, you know, actors kind of set up with all the lights, the dressing area that was completely lit. So you could sit there and kind of, that was another moment where you could take photos. They had, they tried to explain, well, they didn't try, but they explaining like what some of the mechanics are backstage, what kind of pulleys and fly systems you find backstage that was there. And then there was this big wall of there was a whole section for marketing, press, and advertising. And there's a wall that was the life cycle of a Broadway show. And when you get to that spot, it'll be really that's a really good spot if your phone has the ability to do a image, a panoramic image. I think that's like the best way to to do that space. Because it does break it all down and goes and let's write a show, build a creative team, and then build the show and then take it out of town.
As if that's how it happens.
I don't know. That's how it happened on Smash.
Yeah. Well, now we have to go there.
I
Putting a Broadway
know.
show together is not a soap opera,
I know.
no matter what Smash says.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving right on. And this is why they lost me,
And then
because I felt like it was Broadway for a television audience.
yeah.
And I got bored at the end because I wanted to, again, feel something, not just say, oh, yeah, we forgot about all these other people and these other ways that shows are put together. Let's throw it in one space.
And they had a wall that had a world map on it,
Hmm.
and it showed you where some of these shows are currently in the world.
Right. Which will
Um,
change constantly.
yeah, which changes
I
constantly.
wonder
Yeah.
who's doing that. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah,
All
but
right. Well,
in general, if you're a fan who thinks the front row is not close enough, visit the Museum of Broadway. And
uh,
I don't know if you walk out of here thinking you want to be in the business.
nope. I wouldn't think
Uh,
so.
I'm
But
not.
that, well, I don't know. You know when you walk in already, if you're planning to do that. I don't know that this place adds or subtracts. I think it just
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And look, it's not cheap. I just keep thinking it's not like it's a fortune, but neither is Broadway's not cheap either. So here we are, if you bring a family of, four, it's a significant chunk to go through a
Hmm.
museum, which I think a child would not quite get through.
Yeah.
But you see some pretty things along the way, and there may be moments and I don't want to make it sound like I didn't enjoy moments. I did,
Yeah.
but like I'll leave it at that. I don't discourage and I don't encourage. I could have lived without it as someone who's been there, and I still thought it was worth being walking through.
I would say I'm more impressed walking through your hallway.
Yeah,
You know, I because only because you have stories, and
yeah,
I feel like there's a lot of storytelling that has to be done here. I think
and
it would be really great if if you could be engaged for a moment where someone's telling a story, or maybe those are things that might be added in the future. I don't
it
know.
would be nice because even when you go to a museum and you see an art piece, and next to it, there, if you want and if you are interested, you could read the history, you could read some of the information about things that maybe only an art historian would know. It's available.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping at the museum, that I would find available information beyond visually just looking at some corn husks
Hmm.
and thinking this has anything to do with me watching the musical Oklahoma.
Yeah. And so this is in the vein of any of those experiences that
Mm-hmm.
are probably in your town right now. So that's what this is, and it kind
Yep.
of it kind of makes sense. Like, how does New York not have a
Yes,
Broadway
I'm thrilled it
experience?
exists. That's one thing. As critical as I'm going to be here, we
Yeah.
all kept going, what took so long?
Yeah.
So I give the two women who are given credit for putting this together, but who are reasonably young and have not lived through these experiences.
Hmm.
They did a beautiful job.
Yeah.
They
So
really did. I give them a lot of credit. I
so go see for yourself.
Yep.
Links in the show notes because they are not sponsors, and you can
Yeah, we're
you
not
can
trying to encourage or discourage.
you can find moments in that space that you will treasure. But yeah, so
All right.
it
On
is
that
part of the
note,
business, and on
there
that
you go.
note,
See
that
you in the
is
theater as opposed to at the museum.
yes. So that is the business of theater, a working title. I'm Darnell Radford,
I'm Mitch Weiss.
and yes, we will see you at the theater. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.